I want to find out where you're from. I just talked to one of my friends, and I said, hey, you're from Garden Grove? He said, West Garden Grove. I said, Garden Grove, bro, relax. Just chill, dude. Yeah, West Garden Grove, same thing. Okay. All right, where are you guys from? Just shout it out. Where are you from? Did someone just say Barstow? Okay, good. Kidding. CO Beach, I heard that. Who's like a little bit further, out of state maybe? Iowa, Chicago? Who said Chicago? Chicago. You know, I was born in Chicago, right outside. Yeah, I don't remember it, but it was still there. Okay, what else? How about outside of the country? Anybody born outside of the country? Yeah, where were you born? Venezuela. All right. Thanks for coming all the way to church today. That's awesome. So happy. Yeah, okay, good. Australia? Wow, okay, right on. That was a bad trade. Why'd you come all the way here? That's a bummer. I mean, this is great here. We love it. All right. Yes, so hometown is I myself was born in Illinois, but I moved here when I was young with my parents, started Seacoast, and so I was raised in Seal Beach. And it's always interesting when you go back to your hometown, even if it's not very far, or maybe you still live in your hometown, but you go back to your childhood home or you're around your childhood friends and family. And it's kind of fun because you get to hear, at least from the parents and your parents' friends, about what you were like when you were little. And I remember when you were just in diapers and I used to babysit you. And, you know, and it's fun being in your hometown. And this week I was discussing with some people who were originally from the area, or most of the people were originally from the area, but they had lived here during the 60s and the 70s. And so they were telling me all about, there used to be like orange groves everywhere, and you could buy strawberries, and you could do it. And I'm like, that sounds awful. I'm really glad that we've got some more stores and stuff here because, I don't know, it's just not for me. But they were just talking about how fun it was and watching over the years, like all the transition that's taken place in our community and surrounding communities. And one of the interesting things for me is I was not just born in the area, but I was raised in the church. I was raised up in this community here, and there's people that I regularly see that will talk to me about, I remember when I was your teacher when you were a little kid, or I was a volunteer in the junior high group when you were there, or I remember when you were a teenager, and we try to forget those years most of the time. And I often hear, and this is a regular conversation that I have with people, is I remember when you had first got into ministry, this was 20 years ago, you were a junior high pastor, and once in a while they would let you come up and speak on like the main stage. And it was awful. They go, no, it was bad. I could not stand most of the sermons that you preached. And I go, okay, cool, thank you. That's, I'm not sure how that's helping. They go, no, it's fine. You're a little bit better now. Okay, cool, right on, man. Well, we'll see you around. There's something funny about being in your hometown because oftentimes people still perceive you as the age in which they remember or first met you. And the fact that people give me a hard time because they remember when I was young and all that kind of stuff is fine, but it's not unique to me, of course. I think all of us have experienced it to some degree. Even Jesus experienced it. As he goes into his hometown in the story that we're going to be looking at today, and he does not get the hero's welcome that he deserves. In fact, it goes very different. Here's what it says. We're going to be in Mark chapter 6, starting at the very beginning. Jesus left there and went to his hometown, accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. "Where did this man get these things?" they asked. "What's this wisdom that he has been given? What are these remarkable miracles he is performing? Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son, the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us?" And so he comes back, and this is where he spent the first 30 years of his life. And he's performing miracles. They've heard about what he can do. In fact, they probably perform miracles in front of the very eyes. And he's speaking in ways that he should not be able to speak. I mean, he's not a trained rabbi. He's a carpenter. And he comes up with these profound insights. He speaks with this authority. In fact, he may even claim to be God himself, the Messiah, the Savior of the world. And so they really have two choices. One, they can bow down and they can worship him, or the other is they can reject him, they can ridicule him, and they can say that he's completely out of his mind. Which, if you read between the lines, that's pretty much what they're saying here. Is they start saying, wait. No, Jesus, you were Mary's son, right? Which is kind of a weird way to say it, because usually you would talk about you were the son of your father, but they don't reference his father. Why? Well, he was born out of wedlock, and we're not really sure who his dad is. Oh, and he's not an academic. He's not a rabbi. He's a carpenter. And if you doubt us, why don't you just go and talk to his brothers and sisters? Because all of them think he's crazy, which, by the way, would change. If you fast forward after Jesus' resurrection, those same family members would become leaders in the early church. In fact, would become writers of parts of the New Testament. But at this point, they are not convinced. And apparently, they didn't just disbelieve, they took offense at him. When they heard the claims that he was making, that we should bow down and worship, that we should submit our lives to him, that's fairly offensive. And they didn't like what he had to say, especially because, we know you. We know what you're all about. We've seen you grow up. And this is part of what we miss in our culture, is we miss how offensive Jesus is. Sometimes we think of Jesus as like an old school Mr. Rogers. He just wants to be your neighbor. He just wants to be your friend. But here's the difference. Nobody wanted to murder Mr. Rogers. All right, not nobody, but not a whole lot of people, I'm assuming, wanted to murder Mr. Rogers, but nobody worshiped him either. Because to have this version of Jesus that's a Mr. Rogers is ahistorical. It's not who Jesus really was. Everywhere that Jesus went, people had strong opinions about him, and some people were even offended. Now, they were offended, but for different reasons. So a few chapters ago, we saw these different people who were offended by Jesus. They were the elite. So they were the religious elites. They were even the Gentile elites. And they hated Jesus so much that they partnered together. They were enemies. And they decided we're going to come together in order to rid ourselves of Jesus. And so they're offended. But then here we are, and we have this other class of people. You don't know anything about where Jesus was born. It's kind of the middle of nowhere. It's a small village. It's poor people. And yet they are offended. And so everybody on the spectrum, from the elite to the bottom of the barrel, these people are all offended by Jesus, but for different reasons. And it's still true today. Is if you here in the West are offended by Jesus, you're not offended because he preaches forgiveness and love and grace and mercy. We like those things. We start to get offended when we hear about what he says is true about sexuality and sex, and our money and the submission that we are called to give him every arena of our life. Then we start getting offended. But if you were to go to the East or the Middle East, and you were to talk about God and how your life is supposed to be fully submitted to him, every arena, they would say, yeah, of course. And when you start to talk about sexual ethics, they would say, yeah, that's a non-negotiable. But as you begin to talk about, and you're supposed to forgive your enemies, whether they ask for it or deserve it, you're supposed to love those who persecute you, they would say, absolutely not. And they would be offended. See, Jesus is always offensive because he contradicts every culture's popular narrative. We see the world, whether we can acknowledge it or not, through a cultural lens. There are certain beliefs and ideas and values that we hold. We may even hold them very dearly, but we hold them not because they're necessarily true, but because they're popular. Because it's the water that we swim in. And so if you think about some of the things that people believed, let's say 100 years ago, and you look back and you go, that's ridiculous. How could they believe this? We know so much better now. Those people were ignorant. And if you were to fast forward 100 years, do you know what they're going to say about you? The same thing. Oh my goodness, how could they believe that? How could they think that that was okay? It's just ridiculous. And that's happening when he goes to his hometown. Is one of the things, and not just in his hometown, but amongst all first century Jews and even today amongst some people, is they had a popular conception of here's who the Messiah is going to be. He's going to come and he's going to have political power and strength, and he's going to overthrow the enemy of Rome, and he's going to bring us back into our glory days. And then when Jesus arrives, he's a humble carpenter from the middle of nowhere. And they go, well, that can't be the Messiah. There's no way. Because the popular conception is this, and he looks like this, and so there's no way he could be who he claims to be. But here's the problem. Is there may be parts of Jesus that you find offensive, but you do so because of current beliefs and practices. The things that other cultures and other times do not find offensive. And so that's a really bad gauge of if he's true or not. I think we got to ask the bigger questions. Not does he offend me, but is he really who he claims to be? Like, did he perform these miracles? Did he rise from the dead? Is he the Son of God? Because if that is true, the reason why I'm offended by Jesus is not because he's wrong, but because I'm wrong. And so we have to decide, okay, am I offended because of something that I believe that is maybe incorrect, or is it because of Jesus and his claims are found false? Continues on, it says, Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor, except in his own town, among his relatives and his own home. He could not do any miracles there except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. And so it's not that Jesus had a lack of ability to be able to heal these people. It's like, man, like I need your faith to power me up, to get me amped up. Oh, you don't believe? Oh, I guess I just can't do it. No. He lacks the motivation to do so. And if you remember, we talked about why Jesus performed miracles. And the whole reason was not just to heal people, because there was countless people who he could have healed that he didn't. In fact, sometimes he would leave even though there were people waiting to be healed. The reason why he healed people was to validate his claims to be the Messiah. It says, look, I can make these claims, and let me show you that these claims are true by performing these supernatural works. But he looks at these people and he says, there's nothing I can say or do that's going to convince you. Your hearts are hardened. And so I'm not even going to perform miracles in front of you because you've already decided who I am. Verse 6, he was amazed at their lack of faith. So throughout the scriptures, we see there's a lot of people who were amazed by Jesus, but there's only 2 times in which Jesus was amazed by people. One was the faith of the centurion, and the other was by the lack of faith of these people, because it was kind of out of the ordinary. Yeah, I talked about there's these elites, these religious people that didn't like Jesus, but for the most part, wherever Jesus went, he was well received. I mean, he brought with him miraculous acts, and so of course people wanted to be around him, wanted to know. The things that he taught were fascinating, so everywhere he went, people received him, except for here. What was their problem? I think it comes down to this, is they thought they already knew him. They thought they already knew Jesus. Oh, Jesus? Yeah, 30 years I've watched him. He was in diapers. He was running around playing. I remember taking my furniture to get fixed over at his shop. I know Jesus. And yet, they missed Jesus because they already thought that they knew him. There's a saying that we're probably all familiar with, familiarity breeds contempt. It's not always true, but I think it's true in this circumstance. Is the more that we know, the closer that we get to someone or something, it can lead to a loss of respect, taking it for granted, or noticing its flaws. So years ago, I tried to learn how to weld because I have these cars that are not very well put together, and so I try to work on them over time, and one of the things that they needed was welding, and I'm way too cheap to pay somebody to do it, so I thought, I'm going to learn myself. And so I got a welder, and I'm learning how to weld, and when you first learn how to weld, you give that machine a lot of respect, because if you don't know, it burns from anywhere from like 6,000 to 10,000 degrees. And so it is so hot and it burns so bright, it will literally give you a sunburn. That's why you have to wear a mask. It'll sunburn your eyes. You have to be very careful around it. And so I showed it a lot of respect. But over the years, as I got a little bit more used to it and a little bit better at welding, I kind of dropped my guard. And so last summer, I was welding these brackets on this seat that I was putting in, and I finished welding up one bracket, and then I move on to the next, and because I'm not really paying attention, I lean down, and I rest my arm on the bracket that I just welded and just branded my entire arm down the middle of it. And it's because I got too familiar. I got too comfortable. And so I lost respect because of that comfort. Well, I think the same thing is happening here, is people get too close to Jesus, and they start to become familiar, and then they begin to lose respect. I had coffee with a friend this week, fairly new believer in the last few years, and has experienced life transformation. And as we were talking and we're going through all the different things that he's learning and all the life transformation that's taken place, an issue came up. And he said, look, this is actually a part of this faith journey I'm going on that's kind of frustrating. Is I've gone into these groups because you're constantly pushing us into these community groups, and I've really enjoyed them. But once in a while, I'll come across someone, and they will be talking about an area. Maybe it's money, maybe it's your schedule. Maybe it's what you're doing with your body. And we'll talk about, okay, here's what God expects from us. And their response will be, basically, I'm not going to do that. I'm just not interested. It's like they know the information, but they refuse to follow it. So that's really, really frustrating. I said, let me guess the kind of person that you're talking about here, because we've all been in this place in which what we say to be true and how we actually live don't quite align perfectly. And that's part of the struggle, and we've got to wrestle through it. There is a group of people who they have been around church either their entire lives or for a long time, and there's almost nothing new that you're going to teach them. Like they know the scriptures, they know what I'm talking about, they know the rules, they know the commands, they know what's best. And yet because they've been around for so long and they have disobeyed, they're now numb to God's call in their life. Like I've just continued to say no even though I know what I'm supposed to do. And so now it's like I've been immunized by the Holy Spirit. Like I can't react, I don't feel anything anymore because I've just decided not to follow what I know to be true for so long. That's what's happening here, is these people have become so familiar with Jesus, but they never fully submitted their lives to him. The result is they end up missing Jesus. And this is a really scary place to be. This is a scary place, especially for a person like me and maybe a person like you, is if you're around for a while and you get this information, this knowledge about who you're supposed to become, but you refuse to become it, eventually God's going to stop calling. And when that happens and you become numb, that means you probably missed Jesus. And so one of the things that we have to do is we constantly have to be testing ourselves. Have I become too comfortable in my faith? And so I came across an article this week, and it gave some different questions or some different tests to see if you're comfortable in your faith. Let me give you some of those. The first one was this: is if there's no friction between your politics and your faith, you've probably become comfortable. I don't care what political party that you're a part of. If you don't see any kind of tension between that political party and what Jesus calls you to do, you're not paying attention. Because there is no perfect political party, not even close. And so if you think, man, everything that I believe politically totally aligns with what Jesus wants, either you're ignorant or you're ignoring. Because there should be tension. You should go, ooh, I wish they wouldn't do that. Oh, that is not part of how Jesus would do things. But if you're all in on one side and you just go, this is Jesus would be in this political party, you're out of your minds. Okay, next one. You never have any questions about your faith. If you never have questions about your faith, it means you're not wrestling. It means that you're not digging deep. We're talking about an infinite, almighty God, and we're supposed to follow in the footsteps of Jesus, who is perfect, and you don't have any questions? Well, then I'm just going to guess that you're not really digging deep. One of the things that happens, and you can see this in little kids, is you know so little about something that you become confident and have no questions. It's like a 2-year-old. You try to tell them something, they go, no, I know what's best. I know what I should do. But as you get older, and if you can humbly admit you don't know, and you start to dig in, you will actually begin to have more questions than less. The more that I study about God and the Scripture, the more questions that I have. Not necessarily the more doubts I have, although I definitely have those seasons, but it just brings up new questions. And if you never have questions, it probably means you're not really digging deep and trying to learn. Your friends or coworkers are surprised to find out you're a Christian. If your friends or coworkers on Monday morning would be shocked to find out that you were at church and that you are a Christ follower, that might be an indication you're not living differently. Like you've never brought up the fact that, the most important thing in my life is Jesus. Now, let's put this in a different context. Let's say that you're married, and you've been married for 20 years, and you've been working at the same place. And then tomorrow you go in there and you tell them, hey, by the way, did I ever tell you I'm married? And they go, you are married? I would have never guessed that about you. How do you think your spouse would feel? They would go, wait a minute, how are you acting at work that people are surprised that you're married? You have never mentioned me before? We've been together for decades. You know these people. Your spouse would rightfully be a little bit angry with you. Well, the same is true with our faith. You never feel challenged or convicted. If you never feel like, man, that, whether it's through a message, through reading, through whatever, you go, man, the places that I should be as I follow Jesus and where I am at, I just feel challenged. Like I need to step up. I need to move forward. There's a verse, and in it says that we can quench the Spirit, meaning the Holy Spirit comes and speaks to us about who we should be and where we should be going and how to become more like Jesus. And if we never feel that kind of conviction, it may be a sign that we're just unwilling to change, that we're not really open to becoming more like Jesus. Or your faith doesn't cost you anything. That was a lot of what last week was about. I said that you always are going to get more from Jesus than you can imagine, but you're going to have to give more than you're comfortable. And so if you are never uncomfortable because Jesus calls you to do something, to give something, if it's not like stretching you where you go, man, I got to give this much of my money, of my time, of my freedom, man, it is uncomfortable. Which is one of the reasons why we say, hey, when you start to give, because we believe that you're supposed to give 10% of your income, it's called a tithe, back. The danger is for people like myself is, well, I've always done that. I grew up that way, so I never knew anything different. And then a handful of years ago, a pastor said, well, then why didn't you do more? Oh, yeah, that would be uncomfortable, wouldn't it? But it's because I do. I want to be uncomfortable because that's how you grow. That's how you grow physically. That's how you grow spiritually, is you have to continue to get yourself out of your comfort zone, and it's going to cost you. And then finally, you're never confronted in truth and love. This tells me that you are not in community. If nobody ever speaks to you in your life and tells you the hard truth about yourself in love, it means that you have not given access to the details of your life to somebody, especially another believer. That they don't feel they don't have the opportunity or the right to speak into your life and tell you, here's what is true about you, and I tell you this because I love you. But notice who Jesus is with. Throughout all of these passages, who is Jesus? Even as he goes and he visits his hometown, who's right by his side? His disciples. Even in the next verse, it says, and Jesus went around teaching village to village, calling the 12 to him. Everywhere that Jesus went, the disciples were there. They were there when he was visiting home. They were there when he was traveling. They were there for those 3 years, and they were being invested in day and night. And so let me finish with this in the last few minutes that we have with a little bit of a sales pitch. Because we're all about community here. Because we believe that we were made for community, and that is where life transformation is going to take place. And this weekend, there's 2 times a year. This weekend, and then we're going to have another one in the fall in which you can get into a community life group. And so I'm going to give you the hard sell right now because this is going to be your last chance to jump in and become a part of it. And so here's kind of the benefits of community. 1, it's where we tangibly experience God's love. I wish that when I prayed, God would respond with this overwhelming, just warm feelings of love. And I just go, oh, yes, Jesus, okay, tell me more. Oh, I feel your love. That doesn't happen. Usually, the way that I experience God's love is through his people, which totally makes sense because he says we're going to be his hands and his feet, meaning he's going to work through us in order to touch people. And so if we're ever going to experience God's love, it's probably going to be through the work of his people. I can always tell when somebody is plugged in or not plugged in, especially when things get difficult in life. So we get phone calls every week around here of people who are just going through a difficult season. Maybe they've gotten some test results, maybe they're in the hospital, maybe somebody has passed away and they're just trying to figure out how to arrange the funeral, and I can tell within just a few minutes of talking to them whether they are invested in the community here or not. Because if they're not invested, we're one of their first phone calls. Okay, I don't know what to do. We need somebody to come and visit at the hospital. We may need some meals being delivered. Can you help us arrange this funeral? Can you? But if they're invested in the community, we're oftentimes one of the last phone calls. Because they've already called their community group. Those people are already at the hospital praying. Those people are already bringing them food. Those people are already helping with the arrangements. Those people are fully in and invested. And so, yes, you're going to experience God's love, but you're also going to experience things like his comfort when you're plugged into community. It's also where God speaks to us. So there's 4 ways that God speaks: through his word, through prayer, through circumstances, and through people. And one of the ways that we've shaped these programs is you're going to be able to engage in all four of those things. But the last one is you have to be around God's people. There's no such thing as a Lone Ranger Christian. You can't sit at home and hear from God if he's trying to speak through other people. And so we're oftentimes going to be guided in our next season or our next steps when there is someone who gives us wise counsel. I was telling the young adults this last week. I said, guys, here's what you need to know. Your friends know nothing. They're the same age as you, and you know nothing. What you need is you need some people who are older and wiser than you to speak into your life. So maybe you're thinking about getting married. You need a couple who has been following Jesus and been married for 50 years to speak into your life. Or maybe you're new to this whole faith thing and you're trying to figure out, how do I take those next steps? You need somebody who's been walking with the Lord for a long time so that they can show you what those next steps are. See, you're going to learn a lot by just being around God's people. You cannot be who God created you to be without a community of people spurring you on and guiding you to become it. It's also where we're challenged. If you were to look at the 12 people that Jesus called to be his disciples, they could not be more different from one another. I mean, in their professions, in their personalities, they were radically different. And the reason is because if you're going to learn to love like Jesus does, you're going to have to be around people whom it's not easy for you to love them. Like, it's easy to love people who think exactly like you, who have the same opinions or head. Like, that's easy because I love you because you're a lot like me and I love me. But it's a lot more difficult when you're around people you go, I would not choose to hang out with you. I got to be honest, I don't like you most of the time. And Jesus goes, exactly. Those are exactly the people I want you around. People whom it's difficult to love because that's what's going to help you become a person like me who loves even the people who seem unlovable. And it's got to take time. We all look for instant gratification. I want the easy fix, the silver bullet. I just want it. And there is nothing that is actually worth pursuing in this life that happens instantly. I mean, think about it. Your marriage, raising your kids, pursuing a career, none of that happens instantly. The way that it happens is you keep showing up. It's through consistency. I don't jump from this church to this church or from this group to that group. I dig in and I say, okay, I'm here for the long run because that's how I'm going to become like Jesus. It's just by showing up every single day, day after day, month after month, year after year. It's not only where you're going to change, but you're going to help the people around you change. Do you think that Jesus needed the 12 disciples? Like, do you think he's like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do for the next 3 years. I need these guys to help me out. I mean, we're just going to, hopefully they can give me some direction. No, he did not do it for his own benefit. He did it for theirs. You guys are going to need to learn what it looks like to be members in the kingdom of heaven. And eventually I'm going to use you to take this message across the world. But in the meantime, we got a lot of work to do on you. And see, that's true for those of us who think, you know what? I've got my roster of friends. I'm full. I don't need any more friends. In fact, there's a couple I'm probably going to get off of my roster soon. I'm good. I would remind you that it's not all about you. The reason why we get into community is not just what I get out of it. It's not to be a consumer so that I can contribute. And so you may need to get into a group where you can add value to those people's lives, even if you don't feel like you're getting much in return. As well, I want to be around these people because I've been blessed with a great marriage and I've been walking with Jesus for a long time and I've been able to learn some really difficult lessons. And I want to make sure that those aren't wasted on just me. I want to make sure that I can pass those on to other people. And if we can do this whole community thing right, the scripture tells us that we are going to be a witness to the world. Jesus gives us this picture and he says, the church, which is going to be my community, you guys are going to be like this city on a hilltop. You're going to be a light to the world. And so as the rest of the world is just lost in darkness, they're confused, they're broken, they're going to see this community and they're going to say, I want to be a part of that. Those people live very differently, and I'm not sure that I believe what they believe yet, but I do like the way that they live. I do like the purpose that they have. I do feel like I'm drawn towards something that's taking place there. Because as the rest of the world is breaking up and fragmenting, that community seems to be able to stick together. As you're thinking about and maybe wrestling with, should I or should I not just jump in and be part of one of these community life groups, you're already coming up with excuses. I know how this goes. Your first excuse is, well, Cody, that sounds really nice, but I'm very busy these days. You understand, I have a very full schedule. Yeah, have you met someone who's not busy these days? Have you met, I talk to people who are retired and they go, oh, I'm just so busy. I go, with what? What are you doing? I don't know. They seem to be busy. Everybody's busy. And so the truth is you will find time for the things in which you value. You'll find time. Everybody's busy. You'll find time for the things that you value. So just be honest. Say, it's not that I'm too busy, it's that I don't value it. So at least we could be honest with each other. I just don't value this. All right. Or you think, I've tried this before. I've been in community. In fact, I've been through some of the curriculum that you guys have done in the past, and sure, it was fine. But man, I'm just not a people person. I'm just not sure. I kind of had a bad experience one time. They were rubbing me the wrong way. They were trying to get all up in my business, and so I'm not really going to do the community thing anymore. That would be the same as saying, well, I had a bad meal at a restaurant one time, so I'm no longer eating food. What? No. Just because you had a bad experience doesn't mean you quit. Because we don't just try community, we're committed to community. This is what we're called to do, is we have to be in community. And so maybe it's a positive, maybe it's a negative, maybe it's a learning experience, who knows? But we are called in order to become a part of this committed community. And so this weekend's going to be your shot. After this, you're going to have to wait all the way until the fall. And we've done something that we did last semester. We released Jesus Changes Everything. We opened up the CLC, and we're going to continue on. We actually wrote another curriculum called Live Differently. And you don't have to have taken the first one to take the second one. We're actually going to write a third one. Can you guess what it is? Send it. There you go. There's 3 people listening. Perfect. Yes, we're going to do a third one. And the first one was all about, here's who Jesus is. And here's why he changes things. This one is going to be about how we can live like Jesus. And so it's 10 weeks long. We're going to ask you to be committed to those 10 weeks. You're going to do some work during the week where you're going to read, you're going to write a little bit. You're probably going to listen to the podcast in your car if you're being honest. But you're going to do some work, and then you're going to come together with your group, and you're going to discuss. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to learn a lot of great things. You're going to understand more about God and the Scriptures. But you're also going to make some friends. You may even have people who at the very beginning you have never spoken to in your life, and at the end of the 10 weeks you're going to go, hey, this is crazy. I think we're best friends. How did this happen? Well, because it's happened around here countless times. That's part of why we do it. And so we want you to jump in and to be a part of a group. You get signed up today out on the patio or online, but if you're still not convinced, if you're still on the edge, I got one more thing for you. And it's not me, it's some people who've experienced this and the life change that it brought. Watch this.
Hi, my name is Ashley Warden, and I've been going to Seacoast for about 10 years now.
And I'm Garrett Warden, and I've been attending Seacoast for 5 years.
I never grew up really in a Christian household. That was just not a thing for us. In high school, I was kind of introduced to going to Seacoast with a friend, but it was very in and out, kind of like whenever it was convenient.
So I grew up going to church. It wasn't really until I started going to Seacoast that I dove a lot deeper into my faith, into community, and just being there at church with my wife.
End of 2023, I got a text that my friend was killed. I never experienced anything like that before, so I didn't really know how to kind of cope with it. And that was when I remember talking to my husband, and that was like the first time I really started to question my faith and what I was believing in. I think 2024 we went to church only a handful of times maybe, because it was just something that I was having a really hard time dealing with. There was one night where I had just a full-blown panic attack and I did not see a way out of it. And that was the one and only time that I was like, okay, when Garrett gets out of the shower and he goes to bed, I have enough medication to either just help me end it all or at least do enough to make the pain stop. And he came out and did not know what was going on. He would not leave me alone. Thank God he didn't leave me alone. And we went to bed And that next day, it was like, we need to do something about this. We're going to church. That service, I walked in big old letters on the front, mind over monsters. It just spoke to everything that I was going through that year and made me feel so normal and seen. And it was just so relatable and like such a breath of fresh air that people goes through the same things that I go through.
Today, I want to pray for you. If you're a person who has been struggling, maybe it's temporary, maybe it's been a long haul for you, whatever it is, I want to say some words and I want to invite Jesus into your situation and into my situation today.
Seeing everybody at that church who stood up and like let everybody know that they also deal with mental health issues was just, it was insane to me. And that was when I was like, we are going to church every single Sunday. I am getting myself plugged in wherever I can here because this is a community I want to be a part of. And then they did the JCE, so that was my first step of trying to get myself plugged into the church. Honestly, that first class, like we met our 2 leaders and everybody else in the group, and we all just instantly like clicked. There's just something about each of them that we all just have something in common with each other, and it felt really comfortable. It still was a little nerve-wracking having to share, but it was a great experience. I loved it. Going through the JCE class, it really helped me build kind of a strong relationship with God. I mean, I came home after work every day and I opened up my Bible and I turned on the podcast and I started kind of working through. That kind of rubbed off on him. He saw how excited I was. He started really diving into the Bible, and then we started implementing our own Bible studies at home, which then we both felt like we were ready to get baptized and we wanted to take that next step. Through worship, through service, when we were getting baptized, I could barely speak. It was a very emotional experience for me, and it was incredible.
After giving both our lives to God and kind of letting go and letting Him guide the way, I mean, just in our relationship alone, like it's really an amazing connection that we have, and I'm so grateful for it.
Our relationship was good, but I feel like life before was a little chaotic, anxiety-driven, living in the unknown all the time, always constantly worrying. But now life after, it's peaceful. It's like we've just been blessed with so much. And if there's anybody out there that is listening to this and they are experiencing anything similar to my story, I just want them to know that God is not done with you. Talk to your loved ones, get plugged into church, get plugged into the community and volunteer and take the classes because He is not done with you and He has so much more for you. Just take that leap of faith because you won't regret it.
Cool. All right, let's stand together. Please get signed up. This is kind of your last opportunity. You're not going to regret it. We'll see you next week. God bless.